the next hour, we will learn about good ideas from London, England, and Wuppertal, Germany. Ideas that are building sustainable solutions and long-term employment options for refugees. Joining us today are from Wuppertal, Germany, Christine Rodwig Udnia, who is head of the Center for Integration, Education, and Cultural Diversity with the municipality of Wuppertal. And from London, England, Beryl Randall, Director of the Employability Forum. Now let's welcome our first presenter from Wuppertal. It's with great pleasure I invite Christine Rodwig Udnia to share the work of the Participation Network, an intensive job readiness project launched by the City of Wuppertal with community partners to help asylum seekers find long-term employment. Welcome, Christine. The podium is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Feel welcome. I hope you will understand me because English is not my mother language, and so I beg pardon for all the mistakes I will make now. About Wuppertal, here are some facts. I would like to take you a little bit into this town where is a very unique thing, the schlitterbahn. It's a train, a suspension train, and it is something what every newcomer, when he comes in Wuppertal, remarks at once. The train is installed over the river Wupper, and so it passes through the valley of the whole city. So when you are new and you want to meet somebody or you want to find a location, the Schwebebahn, or better his stations, are important orientation marks. In Wuppertal, people from more than 150 different origins are living. This diversity bases in particular on the refugees and Aussiedlerinnen, a special group I can explain if somebody needs it, who came to Germany in the last centuries. Germany had no immigration law till the year 2005. But so it was, that means that Germany has no understanding to be an immigration country. Only immigration that only took place were immigration of refugees and of family members of people who came in the 50s and 60s years of the last century. For refugees, there have been special laws. And so in the year 2006, we had a group of more than 1,000 people who had no real permission to stay in Germany since minimum 8 years till 20 years, with long periods of no right to work, also for young people, life in asylum houses, and a very small budget of social money. With the years, the access to work had become better, so that people, after 4 years in Germany, got an unlimited and unconditional right to work. So in 2006 began a process to give people more opportunities to get a long-lasting permission to stay under the condition to earn enough money. It was necessary that the person itself and his family do not need any social money anymore. And on this base, it was born, it was to recognize the need to support now these refugees to fulfill these conditions under the regard of all the listed barriers. The idea was now to support the refugees to build a network of integration workers who know and worked with the refugees all the time before, who have experience to motivate and activate people in very difficult life situations, with context to engaged members of the civil society, and who work in the object of integration in work. So we needed professionals who were near or were able to create nearness to marginalized people. The aim was to reach all refugees who were unemployed but have now a permission to work. The barriers to overcome were high, and they had to overcome by the refugees and the professionals. The professionals of the refugee work who knew the single persons and the families for years, and they knew them very well. They were skeptical about the motivation of the people to look for and to be able to work. They were also skeptical about their own impact to set in motion such a process. So it was necessary to create a working process in detail which describes a low-level begin for the refugees and for the practical handling of the social workers. It was helpful for everybody to be part of a network, to share the responsibility, to have support by colleagues from other institutions, to have a pool of know-how and instruments by the partners for the individual support of the refugees. In the center of all the activities is a case manager by the public authority, so by the office where I am engaged. They hold the overview. He holds the overview. This person knows the specialized competences of any partner. There, any information is given to, and the case manager saves the consequent follow-up of the process. To follow a common way with the partner and the participant, there is a close communication between the partners and the participation created. The central case management helps also to get an overview about the needs of all participants and how much of them have the same needs. This is and was the base to create short-term trainings accurately for these groups. The results have been more impressive than we have expected ourselves. Like I told you, the social worker were skeptical, but after the beginning with people, this was also a very important step, with people who in the past wanted to work and could not, and these were the first we invited. So we had motivated people, they begin this process, and others, they recognized this process and they came by themselves to ask to the social worker to be part of this program. And this was really a moment where the social worker became self-esteem, and also the participants became more self-esteem. I don't know how much time I have anymore, but I think the program is not finished, and we have passed the 500 placements in work in the meantime. The benefit for all, so I think it speaks for itself. We have calculated what it means to place somebody in work, and there you see the benefit, the financial benefit on the left side, and the benefit for life and dignity for the people themselves. I give you a little bit of time to read it. So what the examples give as an impression is that the people, they, especially those who have struggled before with all the bad conditions I have given before, that they, with this program, they get a push to go into so the situation for the jobs has getting better. Some people, they have never worked before for 20 years and they had no self-esteem at all. They became by learning by learning better German, by contact to Germans, by trainings for application, by trainings to other professional skills, that they became more and more proud of themselves. You have seen the change of the personality, and that with the time they began the first work in a low level, and then they got a better qualified work, often limited because the employees wanted to try how they can work, and and maybe the third or the fourth job was then an unlimited job with which he could earn his money for himself and for his family. So lesson we have learned is that partnerships between governmental authorities and NGOs were the most successful, because this project network has been in a program with other project networks in the Federation of Germany. And in the comparison, these partnerships who governmental authorities and NGOs took part together, they were the most successful. What is important is to have a key partner who takes the central case management to secure that the process, somebody is regarding the whole process. Sometimes you have sent somebody to a partner, and this partner has done by all his special know-how what he can do, but then his know-how is limited. His know-how is never more what is necessary, or maybe also he failed. So then you can see there are other partners, and now we send this person to this other partner, and what partner is the best one for this case, for this person, for his situation or her situation. And then that we can see, oh, these steps have been taken, and now there needs another step, which meant in another way. This is very important, but also, like I told before, that you have that you can see, oh, there is one case and a second case and a third case and a fourth case, and you see this is a group and they have the same needs, they have the same problems. So you can make offers to them as a group, and this gives another dynamic. We have had participants for sometimes 3 years, and they had there was no real movement. And in the third offer we made, suddenly, like there has been something switched around, or switched that he was suddenly engaged, motivated, and he took a push for his personal development in a fantastic way. So what is really important is to identify and to have a network where it's identified, and the competences and responsibilities of each partner complement the others. Important is to do this, to know that it is a process, and it can go only step by step. And when you go this step, and sometimes you have to recognize that a step has to be too fast, or a step has to be too big, or maybe also too little, then that you can get back a little bit and you take the next step. But that what you do is binding and is in written agreements, and also by evaluation with the participants together. So this is with the participants to give a binding into the process and into the communication with the people, but also it is important that everybody, no, I don't know in English, so that you go the same way together with the participants, but also with the partners. It is important to organize a short-term exchange and case discussions between the partners. What is a kind of binding, but also a kind of recognition to the participants is never to give up. The participants sometimes, because of the history, they have not the power to go on when there are too much barriers to overcome, but that you take him and you give him motivation also when there are some difficulties, and that you never give up and you try another idea when one idea hasn't been successful, and that nobody will be kicked off. Nobody has been thrown out. There can happen nothing. What we have done is, when somebody did not want it to work with, yes, we have spoken with him about juristic sanctions, what is into the law, what is within the law, but it was always in the meaning to give a push, to awake the person to do something in his life, to make a better life for himself. Okay, then what I've said before is create opportunities for work qualification training. It needed, but what we have seen is it must be a training what also takes the need of the participants, that it is nearby their needs, that it is something you don't make a qualification by some concept and then the participant has to adopt the concept. No, the concept has to adopt the needs of the participants. This has been very, very important. And one lesson learned and recommendation I forgot here to write on is also to give information about, so it is for Germany because there are very special laws and the permission to work is not for people with a foreign nationality. It is not always given that they can work, and the employers, they know it, but they don't know the details. And so there is sometimes they are afraid also to do something wrong. And so it is important to give information to the employers about the law, to give it to the people who search the work, or to accompany, then you then give the information to the people. And what we have learned also is that the employers were agreed to try somebody, to give him a work, even that he is refugee, even that there is such a difficult juristic situation or something else, because they were a professional and they have the contact, and if there would be difficulty, he knows he can phone to this person, and this person will come and will mediate a conflict, or will give him the information he needs, and he or she will care about. Yes, this is a lesson learned and a recommendation. I forgot to write here, but I remembered in my preparation to this presentation. Yes, thank you for your attention, and I hope it has been interesting for you.
Thank you, Christine. That was very interesting. Thank you for showing us what city leadership and community partnerships can achieve. We've got a lot to learn from your success at the Participation Network, and I must say, for those of you who have read the profile of Wuppertal's Participation Network on the Cities of Migration website, I must say that when we developed the profile of the work they were doing there, we were largely reporting on the success of a pilot project that had been rewarded with an additional 3 years of funding. It is absolutely wonderful to see the outcomes that Christine has reported, and I encourage you all to have a look at the sustained success this program has had. Definitely one to watch and one to replicate. So now, from one city to the next, we're going to shift to London, England. I'm delighted to welcome Beryl, if I jumped too far forward, yes, sorry. I'm delighted to welcome Beryl Randall from London's Employability Forum, a leader in the development of long-term employment opportunities for refugees through programs that bring together direct support to refugees, bridge building with employers, and work at the policy level. Over to you, Beryl. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kim, and I'd like to thank Maitri for this opportunity to present to you. I'll start by sharing a little about how Employability Forum came about. We were founded by Trust for London in 1999, and this was following their research with refugee agencies who wanted to have a focus for discussions on refugee employment and to develop practical policy initiatives to reduce or remove the barriers that are faced by refugees who are seeking to rebuild their lives here in the UK. Now, although we keep an employment focus in our work, lately we've become more involved in integration issues, as you may have seen from the Cities of Migration case study. This includes work on attitudinal change through the Refugees into Schools project and practical policy development with colleagues in the sector to support new refugees who are making the transition from the asylum system to the mainstream. And today, as you can see, I've been asked to talk about the employment side of our work. I thought it would be helpful to give some background information on the UK context. These figures are a combination of ONS statistics for migration, the Labour Force survey, and also a couple of snippets from the census in 2011. Now, obviously people come to the UK for a variety of reasons, whether that's to study, to work, to join family, to visit, and to seek sanctuary. Our current government has a widely published commitment to reduce net migration to below 100,000, which they are pursuing by limiting the study and family inflows currently. The unemployment figures shown are those to June 2013. I'm showing the comparison to London in part because this is where employability delivery is, and also because London is the second largest region in terms of total population, accounting for 15% of the total English population, or just over 8 million residents. Within the ethnic minority figures, and as you can see, that's considerably higher than the London or the UK unemployment rates. Unemployment rates vary widely depending on country of origin, from 20% amongst the black community, 15% for the Pakistani or Bangladeshi community, and 9% for the Indian community, which is closest to the London unemployment rate. I do want to highlight that these figures don't identify refugees. While there's a voluntary on our benefit system within Job Centre Plus for refugees who self-identify, this data is held to be flawed and isn't used. So that leaves us in a position where there's very little current data on refugee employment, unemployment, or underemployment. And just to give you an idea of how many refugees we have, this slide shows you how many grants of status were awarded from the year 2000 until the end of 2012. And as you can see, roughly 10,000 grants of status are made per year from 2005 onwards. Asylum applications run at about 20 to 25,000 per year, so it's about a 40% success rate. The orange line you can see on the graph reflects the grants of status that were given to what is our asylum backlog. These are cases that predate 2006, which have had no decision made on them, and the immigration status that is given is not within the refugee stream. So that can leave refugee agencies in something of a bizarre situation, in that they can help someone one day when they're an asylum seeker, and then if they're in this backlog, when they're given immigration status, the funding that they have to provide services for individuals means that actually they're not supposed to be providing services to them when they have status. Despite the regular stream of new refugees, there is currently no integration strategy in England. I do want to make the point for any Scottish or Welsh colleagues who are listening in that you do have funded integration strategies, which is much more enlightened, I feel, than here in England. Likewise, since the withdrawal of funding for a national integration service in October 2011, there is no way to track the progress of individuals to whom we as a country have granted sanctuary and who will most likely continue on to applying for citizenship, which is something that I find extraordinary given the wealth of information that this would provide in terms of policy development. So I'm moving on to the challenges faced by refugees. And many of you, I imagine, will be familiar with the points outlined on this slide. They aren't specific to the UK by any means. Refugees are not always granted status quickly, are, in the UK at least, isolated from the mainstream, though again, Scotland is much more open, and often struggle to understand how we do things in this country, particularly when they're not fluent in English. Management data from the Refugee Integration and Employment Service, which ran from 2008 to 2011, noted that 47% of clients had basic or no English on arrival. And 6 months later, this is only reduced by 6%. Housing is also a major challenge. Again, management data from the Integration Service shows that at 6 months, 60% of new refugees are living in varying forms of temporary accommodation. From my perspective, access to language tuition and decent advice on how to make the transition from the Home Office operated asylum system to mainstream benefits and support is key at the beginning of a person's new life in the UK. However, these are services that agencies are now struggling to provide in this time of reduced funding, according to a recent survey which we conducted amongst 66 organisations across the UK. When it comes to unemployment and employment, the main problems with employers, I find, is that they, A, do not understand the documentation that refugees present, or really understand that refugees are legally entitled to work in the UK, so they are consequently worried that they will be prosecuted for employing somebody illegally. And B, they're not used to seeing unconventional applications. Refugees are still a very small part of our population, and in this time of economic downturn, employers are getting huge numbers of applications for any job vacancy. So they don't understand, ones with gaps in, ones with qualifications that they don't understand, and ones with no UK experience. If this is the case, quite often the application goes absolutely no further. And with increasing online applications, employers need to check that refugees are able to apply through the system. As an example, one very large employer in the UK has been crying out for engineers. There are refugee engineers in the UK, but in this particular employer, the drop-down selection in the immigration status area on their application forms only let people select British national, EU or EEA citizens, or those with a valid visa. So it was impossible for a refugee client to apply without lying on their application. So what works for clients? In addition to the points here, I'd say agreeing with the client at the outset what they want to gain from participation and the pace of movement that they're willing to accept. We are also very clear what the value is of each step, what they will get out of it. And this is something that we very often have to explain in some detail when we're talking about work experience, and particularly volunteering and mentoring, which don't necessarily exist as something they would do as a matter of course in their countries of origin. Many refugees are unsure of their rights and entitlements in the UK because those provisions don't exist in their country of origin, and it's important that those are explained. Otherwise they are stuck in this cycle of we don't know what we don't know. For professionals, getting vocational English is absolutely essential. Some professions, for example health, have developed special language provision and also a funding training to allow people to return to their profession. For example, the refugee doctors project that's run through the Refugee Council and the Refugee Assessment and Guidance Unit at London Metropolitan University. Other professions provide glossaries so that overseas trained professionals can learn what the appropriate terms are in the UK. For example, the Association of Accounting Technicians have done this for its members. But getting UK work experience, whether this is through volunteering, through work placement, or through some form of organised work experience, means such a lot to employers, taken as an expression that the refugee understands or at least has experienced the working culture here. One other thing is hearing and networking with refugees who successfully made it. The support sessions that we've run for refugee teachers have been really dynamic, where it's included somebody who is currently working in a school and can explain to them how you manage the bedlam of 30 to 35 children in a classroom and ensure that learning comes through. I wanted to share with you an example of one of the things we do as delivery. We run a very small number of refugee teacher work placements every year. We recruit our clients through advertising with refugee community agencies with whom we've built up a relationship, as well as online and through some of the major agencies in the UK. When we recruit clients, one thing that we do straight off is to find out whether they are on benefits, and then to work with Job Centre Plus to make sure that the individual is not near a mandatory referral to another training programme, because then they won't be completing their work placement with us. We do insist that people attend an initial training session so that they understand what they're getting into. We run placements 2 to 3 days a week over 6 to 8 weeks, and at the end of that, the refugee will come out with a reference from the school that clearly outlines all the different goals that they have achieved during their time there. We have regular monitoring with the schools, setting up the placement initially with the client and with the school, monitoring halfway through, and having an end of placement review. And you can see below some of the outcomes that we've had from this, just from 1 year, and some of the feedback from schools. We get schools from some of our previous work through Refugees into Schools, where we were arranging visits by refugees to talk to children about what it's like to seek asylum. Also, we talk to groups of head teachers, and we use them to help promote the idea of taking somebody into their school and giving them a work placement. And finally, we've also worked with local authorities who've helped us target particular schools who have either had a new inflow of asylum-seeking children, or who have seen a growth in their ethnic minority pupil population. And those we found to be really quite successful. When we have had a placement in a school, usually we find that the school would like another one. So it then becomes something that is very easy to maintain and becomes really quite low cost, which at the moment is also really very helpful. What works for organisations? I think here I can speak mostly for what works for us as a small and rather specialist organisation. And with that, one-to-one time is absolutely at a premium. What we're seeing with us and with other organisations is that we're all trying to build more low-cost models. This means using volunteers a lot more than we would have perhaps in other years, say for example in the years from 2002 to 2005, where there was a lot more funding available for refugee work, or building information websites or providing phone lines rather than having drop-in centres. In our recent survey, during which we, as I said, we spoke to 66 organisations, one issue that came up over and over was the lack of comprehensive information for advisors following the cuts to services, and the asylum support service has been cut by 60%, so it really is working at bare bones. working with Job Centre Plus and working with the Home Office, our response has been to build a simple website that brings together all the concessions and exceptions that apply to refugees so that the information can be shared more widely. And I've got a screenshot of that here, which way I hope you can see clearly all the different tabs of information that we are putting on there. There is also a separate membership area for advisors to use that won't be publicly available, so that it provides a space for us to share discussions on particular issues and also to share evidence, because with the number of agencies becoming smaller and more specialist, actually working together to build portfolios of evidence to then take forward to government agencies or to local authorities or to employers is really important. This is not yet live. One thing I didn't quite realise when setting up a website is quite how big it can become, but we are aiming to have this live by Christmas, and I'll be publishing the link for that later on this month. I think the last thing I wanted to say was that the importance of engaging employers and keeping them engaged with you is really key to keeping your employment work going. There's nothing like word of mouth in the refugee sector, and people will come to you because they've heard that their friend has found a job or has had a good placement and gained good experience through you. And having those employers there is just vital to keeping it going. I think at this point I'm going to stop and thank you for your time and for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Oh. Well, thank you, Beryl. Thank you for sharing the excellent work at the Employability Forum with us, and in particular for raising again that the all-importance of educating employers around this work, as well as sharing evidence for what succeeds, while of course creating tremendous support for refugee clients. So I hope everyone here has learned as much as we have from these really important, innovative, and very practical ideas. You know what we say, good ideas travel, and that's what we want. We want you to learn from these ideas and to see them replicated more broadly. You'll notice now that there is a new poll on the screen. Let us know if you might adopt today's good ideas in your own city. You can cast your vote anytime before the session ends, and it's an anonymous poll, and I do encourage you to participate. It's great. So we've now concluded the formal presentation part of our webinar. It's time for our Q&A, and I think I'll open the Q&A with a question for both Beryl and Christine. For many of the people in your programs, conflict and dislocation have disrupted the working lives of skilled professionals, people with a range of skills, with a range of educational backgrounds and professional experience. Yet the stereotype of sort of the homeless and destitute refugee often persists. So how do we change public perception of refugees to include an appreciation of the considerable education and skill that they bring with them? And perhaps we could open that question to you, Beryl.
One of the things that we've done through the Refugees into Schools project is go in with speakers from refugee communities to share their experience. And one thing the children, and we spoke to just over 5,000, were quite surprised by is actually that people were from a professional background. These were journalists, they were teachers, they were doctors, and they were campaigners, and they found that quite surprising. I think getting more case studies out there, and also, I mean, I'm something of an evangelist about this Refugees into Schools program. I think it was absolutely fantastic in the change that you could see happening with the children as they talked to somebody. I think working with children is very important to make sure that they are open to refugees and also to meeting them later on in life.
That's great, part of a long-term strategy then for input. Very good. And for you, Christine, How does your work, how important is it to change public perception of refugees as potential employees?
Yes, it is very important, but it is also such a big problem to change the perception. So in the understanding of a public opinion, that the influence we can take there is only in a certain more little way, and this is that, for example, with this program or with this kind of working with the people, that we in the moment when we can or when these people, when the refugee itself, he comes in contact with German employers and with German employers, and he can prove his skills. Then there is a changing, because this employer speaks with other employers, he speaks in his family, he speaks with his friends, and so on. And at the same time, for us, it is important to make also a sort of campaign to communicate to others the good examples that have been created in this in this program, for example. To give another view on the refugees, like they are in the head here in Germany.
Very good. My next question is, and this is something again that both of you have talked about, finding a good job requires confidence and an understanding of how the local labor market works, but it also requires employers who are receptive to the contribution that refugees can make. And so I wonder, what has been your most successful strategy for engaging employers in your work? And Christine?
Yes. So the most successful was to go from door to door, to speak to the employers by themselves, to contact them, to speak with them, and then to give them information, because, like I told in my presentation, many employers have the same image, have a certain image of refugees in his head, and they know that there are juristic complications, and so to eliminate these barriers in the head of the employers. This was very important, and to give them the possibility or the confidence that if there will be whatever for a problem, that they have a contact where they can phone and where is somebody who can help to clear the situation. This was the most important practical strategy to find work, to succeed in job placement.
Now, I have two questions that have come in that are similar that I'm going to share. The first comes from the Southern Sudan Community Association in the U.S., and he says, in my city, the most common employers who find refugees employable are the hotels and meatpacking plants. These employers are one of the few that don't require U.S. work experience. Is this similar in the UK and Germany? Where do most refugees find work in your locations? And a related question comes from Eileen Butler from the state of Utah, who wants to know how you help validate the refugees' skill sets to the employer. So the larger question is, are refugees limited to employment in low-skilled and service jobs because we fail to recognize their qualifications and because of a lack of work experience? What's the situation like in the UK? Beryl?
I think unfortunately the most accurate answer is that we don't know because we don't collect data on refugee employment, unfortunately. However, in terms of reports from agencies that are also working on employment, there is a demand for people to work in the social care sector. There is a demand for people to work in the hospitality sector. So people go there because you can pick up a job there. It's not necessarily where they stay, but it can be for some people an entry job. In terms of validating skill sets for employers, quite often we try and use work experience to do that. So for example, with teaching, when we begin the work placement, we set out the goals for the work placement. So at the end of it, the reference shows clearly that the individual has been able to plan and lead a lesson, that the individual has been part of the staff meetings, that the person has had input on curriculum development, and so on. So it makes it much more useful for the individual at the end of the placement.
Thank you. And Christine, in Germany, how do you help educate the employers? How do you validate the refugees' skill sets to employers?
So we, okay, I understood that I'm not sure again if I have well understood, but it's a question to elevate the skills or to in which branches they are engaged.
I think it's both things, but I think that what was observed was that many refugees end up working in low-skilled service jobs, often because of a failure to have their education and work experience recognized in their new homes. And so, so the question is, in Germany, how are you helping German employers recognize refugee skills?
So it is that in the past it has been so there's three things to say. In the past, yes, there has been no alternative than to work in low skills and very bad condition also to find a work, because the juristic situation has been that the access to work has been a very small one. But in the meantime, it has changed, and so the access to the labor market is better. So what is the problem here in Wuppertal, but I think also in Germany, is that till now, I can say for Wuppertal that the majority of the refugees are not so high skilled, so that the people are low skilled people or no skilled, no skill in the meaning of no qualification, no professional qualification, and in this so then there we look for how we can develop them, and then it is a question what they have as educational education. And so in the meantime, since 2005, there are integration courses, there are German courses, German language courses for professional work with certain specialities, and it's not for every refugee open, but when you are in the target group I have described, then you can enter to these courses, and these courses evaluate your language skills and your professional skills. It gives you the possibility to make, how to say in English, a practice training, and by this practice training, what you do in, for example, in enterprises or in a certain to an employer. So you can show also your skills even when you have no formal qualification. And in some professions it's possible that you have been engaged even when you have no formal qualification. There are other professions you need a formal qualification, And so in reality, when you are young enough and when you are when your school education is good enough, then you have also the possibility to learn a profession, to make an education.
That's very good. Thank you very much. We have run out of time. It's 11 o'clock. So I want to, we're at the end of the Q&A, and I would like to close by asking our there's been a number of questions on the whole issue of recognizing foreign credentials, and I applaud both of you for working as closely as you do with employers to help overcome some of those barriers, which of course are systemic and do need to be addressed at a high level, at a policy level. But these practical initiatives and the kind of education and information you're providing are critical to moving the needle on that particular agenda. So thank you so very much for that. We are at the end of the Q&A, and I'd like to close. I'd like to ask our presenters a final question. So to both of you, if you had to describe in one word what the secret to your success was, what would that word be? And maybe Beryl, will start with you. One word, secret to your success?
Persistence.
Persistence, excellent. And for you, Christine, what would that be? In German.
Appreciation.
Appreciation. Persistence and appreciation. That excellent. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Beryl. Our time has run out. Thank you, audience. Our time has run out. We'll send unanswered questions to our presenters. But in the meantime, on behalf of all of our participants and Maitri, we want to thank Christine Rodvig-Udnia from the municipality of Wuppertal, Germany, and Beryl Randall from the Employability Forum in London. I'd like everyone to imagine this excellent work being interpreted in your city, adapted by your organization, or changing your neighborhood. We'd like to hear your stories and share more good practices like these, so please stay connected.